Turning the page on Harris and Walz. If Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about gun violence, they should at least say something about a victim of gun violence. Is it too much to ask them to say something about the heroism and strength of President Trump? Is it really too much to ask? Is it too difficult for them to acknowledge that Donald Trump is a survivor of gun violence? Is it too unreasonable for them to admit that two men have tried to kill President Trump? Maybe more, but two for sure. Or should Harris just continue to say inflammatory things about President Trump instead of saying something clear and convincing to discourage her supporters from attacking the former president? What about Walz, who calls himself a coach? Should he stop demonizing President Trump instead of saying President Trump demonizes his opponents? Stop calling him a threat to democracy? Perhaps there should be a moratorium on the Democrats who use violent rhetoric, lots of it. Kamala Harris, she wants to be a leader, then lead the way. She is the most egregious offender. She is a repeat offender with regard to hate speech, and yet she has the audacity to cackle and comment on the importance of words. She says words have meaning. Indeed they do. Indeed they do. Too bad she doesn't know what she says. Too bad she has done nothing to prove she knows something, anything, about domestic policy or foreign policy or the economy or NATO or fundamental issues of war and peace. Her record is nothing more than a 3.5-year-long series of gaffes and guffaws and verbal train wrecks. Listen to this.
You know, I learned a long time ago in my career, having a background as a prosecutor, when you have these positions, when you have that kind of microphone in front of you, you really ought to understand at a very deep level how much your words have meaning.
Oh, how much your words have meaning. How nice. How ironic, then, for Harris to say she wants to, quote, turn the page on harmful rhetoric. She must not read or listen to her own speeches because she does great harm to the English language. She should review the pages her speechwriters give her or discard them entirely, because everything she has said to date, every line she's memorized, every sentence she's regurgitated slowly off a teleprompter has been either irrelevant or incomprehensible too many times. The meaning, however, is not lost on America's enemies. Put another way, no one who hears Harris fears her at all. No one who listens to Harris thinks she is competent or credible, least of all the Islamists in Hamas or Hezbollah. None of them hears more.
And I think most people in our country, regardless of their race, are starting to see through this nonsense and to say, you know what, let's turn the page on this. This is exhausting and it's harmful and it's hateful and grounded in some age-old stuff that we should not have the tolerance for. So let's turn the page and chart a new way forward and say, you can't have that microphone again.
Yeah, you know, calling him Hitler, Mussolini, a dictator, someone who's going to create a revolution in America, somebody who's a threat to democracy and a threat to the future of America. Yeah, maybe those things could be left behind. Maybe lying about the term bloodbath could be left behind. But they don't have a mirror. She has no mirror, and the same applies to Tim Walz, who speaks of himself as America's coach, unless he considers losing the highest victory he can spare us his plans to defeat America. I have no interest in listening to his pep talk. And besides, he was never the head coach, by the way. He was a volunteer assistant coach. Did you know that? Just a volunteer assistant coach. He didn't lead any team to the national championship. He just took credit for it. State championship, I guess. After the most recent attempt on President Trump's life, Walz has no right to accuse anyone of anything. If Walz says he cannot imagine demonizing somebody, he's right. He doesn't have to imagine the truth, for the truth is Walz has demonized President Trump repeatedly. And his wife, Gwen Walz, and her turning the page rant, now this is something in need of great medication. Did you see this? Did you hear this? If not, here it is.
I think this demonizing somebody because they think differently is really dangerous, because in coaching, I can't imagine that. If you're just in it for yourself, oh, I rushed for 1,000 yards. Too bad you didn't win a game. That's the thing. And I think when you get people thinking that way, things work out really well.
So when Tim Walz accidentally tells the truth, believe him. When, for example, he says the Second Amendment is not his first priority, he means it. It's not a priority for him at all. He said that just 2 days ago when he spoke about gun violence after calling himself a veteran hunter, which is an insult to veterans and a slander against hunters. Walz went on to say he owns firearms. Does he want a medal for that? I mean, does he expect to get another fake promotion? Does he think he deserves a citation for that? He pays lip service to gun owners. That's it. He undermines the Second Amendment, reducing it to a privilege, not a right, a privilege. He presents a false choice between liberty and safety, demonizing gun owners for the sake of his purported love of children. When did personal protection become so dangerous? When did my right to defend myself, my family, my community become so dangerous? Why must citizens be unsafe in a country where they're importing millions of people we don't even know where they came from? Why must they practice disarmament and render themselves vulnerable to attack, huh? Why, Tim? So Tim Walz can speak well of safety in theory? Does his proposal not demonize gun owners? Of course it does. Does his theory not run counter to the Constitution and common sense? Of course it does. By what right does he have the temerity to harm the Bill of Rights? What right does he have? Listen to this.
I'm a veteran, a hunter. I own firearms. Second Amendment's important, but our first responsibility is the safety of our children.
No, it's not. The first priority is the protection of the United States Constitution. The first priority is the defense and protection of the Constitution. That's the oath you took, you clown. To uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. To uphold and defend the United States Constitution. That's your first priority, you clown. You were in the military. You've been in public service. That's number one. Number one. More on this coming back. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Do that. We're creating a movement. And sign up and become a follower on Substack, the Steve Gruber Show. Help us out here. I'll be right back.